Shalom. I greet you all in the name of the Lord, Yeshua HaMashiach. Well, there's no need for much introduction. You all know me by now. Now, precious saints, I come at this hour with a prophetic urgency of a prophetic vision that I encountered by the night. Precious saints, in this prophetic vision, I saw the bald eagle nation. I saw the bald eagle nation flying away out from the mountains surrounding Jerusalem. I repeat, I saw the bald eagle nation flying away from the mountains surrounding Jerusalem. And when this bald eagle was flying away, I saw eruption, like volcanic eruption, and the mountains surrounding Jerusalem, they were quaked. The mountains quaked. The mountains quaked. And when I looked again, by the help of the Lord, I understood through prophetic intelligence that the bald eagle nation, this is the United States of America, is about to commit a treacherous, painful betrayal against its body. The body in this case is Israel. And I have seen the betrayal is going to be very painful, because the house of Israel, the nation of Israel, has so much hope in the bald eagle nation, which is the United States of America. But in this vision, I saw this bald eagle fly away out from the mountains, because the bald eagle nation has been accustomed quite often resting on the mountains surrounding Jerusalem, to indicate that this bald eagle enjoys its harmony and posture of rest on the mountains of Israel. But I saw it fly away and never return. There's going to be such a treacherous, painful betrayal that the bald eagle nation, this is United States of America, is about to betray Israel. And this is a prophetic warning. So I'm preparing you what I have seen. The Lord bless you. Pray for Israel. Pray for America.
All right, the United Nations Security Council, it's approved a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza.
Israel's longtime ally, the United States, abstained from voting. And experts say this highlights the all-time low in the ties between US President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was expecting the US to veto the resolution altogether.
Now, soon after the vote, Netanyahu also abruptly scrapped a visit by a senior Israeli delegation to Washington. The aim of the meeting was to discuss Israel's planned offensive in Rafah.
According to Netanyahu's office, the failure of the US to veto the resolution is a clear retreat from its previous position and will hurt Israel's war efforts. The threat of an offensive in Gaza's Rafah has increased tensions between US and Israel. Experts claim if the crisis is not managed carefully, it's only going to continue to worsen with time.
Now, the suspension of the meeting in Washington, it also jeopardizes the United States' efforts to tackle the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza.
Let's turn to West Asia now. A very important alliance is reaching its breaking point. The one between Israel and the US. It's been a rock-solid one, an alliance that has shaped modern West Asia. But the Gaza war could snap it. On Monday, the United Nations Security Council voted on a new ceasefire proposal. Now, normally, the US would have vetoed it, but this time they did not. 14 UNSC members supported the resolution and the United States abstained. So the ceasefire resolution was passed. It was the first since the war broke out in October. And what does this resolution say? Well, broadly, it says three things. One, a ceasefire during the month of Ramadan. Two, the release of all hostages held by Hamas. And three, more aid shipments to Gaza. Now, in the past, the US had opposed all such resolutions. They vetoed 3 of them in 6 months. So what has changed now? What has changed is the situation in Gaza. Some 32,000 Palestinians have been killed. Almost 70% of the victims are women and children, plus humanitarian aid is drying up. Most of Gaza is on the brink of famine. So Joe Biden is feeling the pressure. Arab nations are asking him to change his position. Muslim Americans are abandoning him. So the US decided to abstain from voting. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is quite upset with Biden. In fact, listen to his statement. I'm quoting, "The United States has abandoned its policy in the United Nations today. This resolution will harm both the war effort and the effort to release the hostages." But Washington does not see it that way. They say their policy is unchanged.
We're kind of perplexed by this. The Prime Minister's office seems to be indicating through public statements that we somehow changed here. We haven't. And we get to decide what our policy is.
So the US is changing its policy, but they say they're not. Will Netanyahu play along is the question. An Israeli delegation was supposed to visit the US this week, but Prime Minister Netanyahu has cancelled it. His defense minister also said the war will continue, meaning no ceasefire in Gaza. But can Israel really do that? Can they ignore a United Nations Security Council resolution? UN officials say they cannot. Israel is a member of the United Nations, therefore all UNSC resolutions are binding on them. But the United States has a different idea. They say this resolution is non-binding.
So with respect to the first resolution, it is our interpretation of this resolution that it is non-binding. For any detail on that, I would refer you to the office of our ambassador to the United Nations, who can, of course, speak in more detail of how we reached that conclusion.
So there's major legal confusion here, but politically, it's a signal from the US. Yes, they have changed their policy, but it's not a U-turn yet. It's not a complete abandonment of Israel. At least not yet. But we could easily reach that stage. You see, Joe Biden has all the leverage here. Most major powers have turned against Israel. Even US rivals are backing Palestine, so it's not like Netanyahu can go running to the other side. Plus, Israel is a regional power. It cannot sustain a war against global opinion. Not like the US did in Iraq or like Russia is doing in Ukraine. Because eventually, Israel will feel the heat, and Biden knows this. He's got a lot more levers to pull. The most important being military aid. Israel has been the biggest recipient of US aid since the Second World War. Do you know how much money we're talking about here? Almost $124 billion. That's what America has given Israel. In recent years, the annual aid has been $3.3 billion. That's 15% of Israel's military budget. We're talking about missiles, fighter jets, bullets, ammunition. Last month, a new plan was presented in the US Congress, an aid package worth $17 billion. Again, pure military aid. And it's not just about the money. It's also about the type of weapons. You may have heard about Israel's Iron Dome. It shoots down rockets and missiles fired at Israel. The Iron Dome. Now, the Iron Dome is a joint project. Israel and the US produce it together. So when the Iron Dome runs low on ammo, the US refills it. What if Biden holds back on that? Israel could be left vulnerable. So far, Joe Biden has not done that. In fact, he's expanded his military aid since the war broke out. I've got some numbers for you there. By December, the US had sent some 230 cargo planes and 20 ships to Israel. And what was in these shipments? 21,000 precision-guided munitions, thousands of bunker busters, 200 kamikaze drones, 57,000 artillery shells, and 15,000 bombs. All of this in less than 6 months. So the takeaway is quite clear. Israel may be fighting the war in Gaza, but their weapons are American. If Joe Biden cuts off those shipments, Israel will struggle. They may defeat Hamas in Gaza, but they will struggle to replenish their arsenal. So it's a big lever for Joe Biden. The question is, will he use it? A lot of countries have stopped military aid to Israel already, like Spain, Canada, the Netherlands, and Japan. All of them are American allies. Some US Democrats are also pushing for it. They're asking the president to cut off military aid. Having said that, it's still a nuclear option. Biden would be up against decades of US policy and tradition. But at this rate, who knows? Netanyahu is famous for pushing American presidents to the brink. We'll have to wait and see how Biden handles him.